Pedig Beis. V'hine mikan. From this discussion, and this discussion means the Yesh Me'ayin discussion. Forget the Yossi. In other words, forget the Shir of Ches Sivan. Go back to Zion Sivan again. Mikan. We talked about the idea of Esavas B'chol Regel, which is critical. Since we believe, Yiddishkeit believes and teaches as a priority, based on a Pasuk and a Medrash and a Baal Shem Tov, the Eibishter creates the world not Yesh Me'yesh, but Yesh Me'ayin. And once you have Yesh Me'ayin, you get to the next inevitable and critical point, and that is what's called in Chassidus is Havas B'chol Regel. Hashem is created every single second. If Hashem is creating the world every single second, there must be involvement. There could Hashem any second can change it because He's personally involved. There could be Hashgacha Pratis, there could be miracles and so forth. As opposed to the philosophers that Apakursim, who believed in God, but they believed only in Yesh Me'yesh. So it's not only a chilik of what Hashem creates, and they believe that the Ruchni, the Chemedak was Kadmen, that the material of creation always was. They're saying Hashem's connection to creation is from a distance. He creates it once and He goes off to the heavens, and He has no shaykhs to the lower world. V'hine mikan. This idea of Yesh Me'ayin is Tshuvas Hamina, is an answer to the Apakursim, V'gili, and it exposes Sheiresh Ta'us, the root of their error. HaKefrim, that they denied Bashgacha Pratis, the divine intervention of the Eibishter in every detail of creation. And moreover, and the idea of miracles. Apakursim don't only believe miracles didn't happen, Apakursim believe miracles cannot happen. Why? Because Hashem is not involved. For miracles to happen, someone has to change the nature, but that's not the way the Eibishter operates. Hashem is involved only from a distance. He's Meniyas HaGalgal, He's involved indirectly, because since they believe in Yesh Me'yesh, what Chassidus calls Ilo V'Yolo, it doesn't have to be every single second. He's involved from a remote place. If He's involved from a remote place, He doesn't get involved, and later on we'll see He cannot get involved according to the Apakursim, in the Iyam from Yediyah. Since He's not involved, He can't change it. If He cannot change it, there can't be any miracles. And there can't be Hashgacha Pratis. But we disagree fundamentally. And this is already a religious issue. This is not a philosophy issue. What is the philosophical basis for our arguing with emphasis that there is Hashgacha Pratis and there's Eisus Meifsim, Yesh Me'ayin? Because Yesh Me'ayin engages the Creator in creation. B'chol rega v'rega. There's no such thing as indirect involvement. The Apakursim, that means Aristotle Vesayate, made the error in their false imagination based on the following premise. They make a comparison between the acts of God who's creating heaven and earth to the work of man and his schemes. And notice the word Enesh, which is the weakest denotation for man, as I told you the other day. Key, and here's the example. When a craftsperson makes a vessel, he makes an earthenware vessel. Shuv eina kli tzarich adei. The vessel no longer needs the craftsperson. The person has removed his hands from this vessel. Moreover, he's gone out into the market. The Rebbe has a diak. In other words, he's not even thinking about the vessel. The vessel doesn't disappear. It continues to exist in its form and in its essence, mamish. Just the way he made it. And it's going to last for a very, very long time, relatively speaking. So these fools compare where Hashem creates the world. Their eyes have been smeared closed from being able to see the huge distinction between the acts of man and his schemes, which is simply creating from one physical entity a different physical entity. He's simply changing the form and the gestalt. Turn the page. From a raw piece of silver, litmunas kli, to the form of a vessel. So he hasn't created silver, simply given it a different shape. And remember, the new shape already exists in the possibility of raw silver because it continues to be solid and it has the chemical properties that it had as raw silver. The exact same chemical properties exist as it's been shaped into a silver vessel. You haven't changed the silver fundamentally. Says the Rebbe, but when it comes to creation, that it comes from a thing, from a non-thing into a thing. And when something is coming from a non-thing into a thing, it requires constant intervention, constant involvement. Now you should know, you'll hear today in the scientific community also talking about ex nihilo. But ex nihilo in science today means quantum changes and things appearing and disappearing. But really it's not from nothing into something. It's from nothing in this physical form to nothing to a different physical form. Or nothing that you could see here to nothing that you can see someplace else. Real Yesh Me'ayin means it's not relative, it's not in other words, in a certain frame of Yeshmayim, it's mamish. Before it was a shtik eibishter, which has no shaychus to Metzias whatsoever, and then magically and miraculously and instantaneously it becomes a physical thing. There is no example of Yeshmayim in science. It's outside of the realm of science, because science can only deal with the observable universe. Yeshmayim is by definition unobservable. By definition unobservable. As we'll see in the next Pedic, that if we would see Yeshmayim, we would become the ayin. We cannot be witness to Yeshmayim and be Yesh. So it's fundamentally precluded from us from being able to prove what is a fundamental part of our faith, that the word has been created ex nihilo. It's even a greater miracle than the miracle of splitting the sea. Now, let's talk about splitting the sea. What happened when Hashem split the sea? So he brings the Pshuta Shal Mikdash. Hashem sent a wind, led the sea, with an eastern wind which was mighty. Kol halayla was blowing all night. And the water split. And as a consequence, the nitzvu kameneid ukachem, it stood up like a barrel. A barrel means a reciprocal which is holding the water in one place, and kachayim, and like a stone wall. Right? The difference between the word neid and chayim would mean neid means something other than the water is holding the water. Right? Like a barrel holds the water. Kachayim means like stones. Nothing is holding up the stones. The stones are holding up themselves. It's already a higher madreg in the nest. First, the water is uplifted through a level of neid, where the water wants to run, and something extraneous is preventing it from running. And then the deeper madreg is kechayma. You understand? This is Rebbe's diyukim. Now, in Darach HaTeva, if the wind would stop blowing for an instant, but the Eibishter's will, of course, the waters would return and roll and tumble with all of their force and pressure, as is their path, v'tivim and their nature. They would no longer stand as a brick wall without any doubt. So there has to be a constant infusion of the hand and the will of Hashem to change the nature of water from being in a state of neiza, which means flowing, to a state of neid, and on a higher level a state of chayim. Look at that. Even though water is the fundamental nature of flowing and being adhesive and all the other qualities of water, was also created by the Eibishter from a state of non-existence to a state of existence. And the proof is, a wall of stones, can stand on its own without a wind. It's only that water doesn't have this nature. Hashem has given water one nature and given a stone a different nature. So first of all, water's nature is also the hand of God. Second of all, the stone's nature already exists in the physical reality. So when Hashem makes water become like stone, He's not creating a new Metzias. He's simply adapting to water a nature that already exists in His physical universe in a different circumstance when it comes to stones. And still, because it's against the nature of water to be made, you need a wind. You don't need a wind to hold up a wall. To make water act like a stone, you need to have a wind that has to be b'chol rega v'rega, or it would return to its state of non-existence. If in yesh meyesh, two things that have different natures, for Hashem to superimpose the nature of one, the stone, on the nature of another, water, requires constant intervention. How many more times so in the creation of the world, from a state of non-existence into a state of actual existence. It's completely above nature. It's not changing one form into a different form. It's creating form itself in a fundamental way. It's above nature of a half of a fella. It's a greater wonder, much greater than the splitting of the sea. So if Kriyas Yamsuf has to be b'chol rega v'rega, Allah has come how much more so? If God forbid, Hashem would remove the power that animates, that forces Yesh to be Yesh, God forbid, from being Yesh, Yoshuv HaNivra la'ayin ve'efes mamish, the Nivra would return to a state of non-existence on both of those levels called ayin and efesh. And therefore, Ella, it's imperative, it's must, that Tzarach Li is Keach Apel Benifal Tamid has to be power of the Creator in the creation constantly. Lachesa to give it life, which is Neshama, or L'Kaima to give it existence, which is Guf, which is, we'll call the animating force. Now, I want to make a very important observation that Rebbe makes in his Sichos. And that is, this seems to be a Raya of Seichel. What's the Raya for Yesh Meyayin? Kiyas Yamsuf, Seichel. But the Rebbe says that it's not enough of a Raya, because, by the Eibishter could be Nimnan noise. I mean, Tzad Nimnan noise, the Eibishter wants, He could make a world that He creates one instant, and it should last forever, and it wouldn't need renewal from the Eibishter. But that would be L'malam and a And therefore, this is only a Seichel de Keraya. Above the Seichel de Keraya, you need a Pasuk. That the pasuk says, "La'elam avayit dvarcha nitzav b'shemaim." Tate is testifying that although Eibush has a keach, l'maylo min haseichel, that he shouldn't have to be b'chol rega v'rega, but Tate is telling you, first of all, api seichel has to be b'chol rega v'rega, and second of all, Tate says that in amitis ha'inyanim, the Eibush actually made the world this way, not because it needs to be this way, it's because the Eibush wants it should be achdus. And he says, goes back to the same point what you had at the end of Perek Aleph, and I'm really wondering why the Alter Rebbe keeps going back to Asius. The hein, and this pav yesh miyayin goes through the procedure of bechinas eis adiba, the words of speech, masanim amaris, or the 10 utterances shebehen nivru, from which the world was created. The Alzeh Nemer, as the pasuk says, va'ata machayes kulam, you give life to everything. I'll take you machayel amahav. Not only he gives life, which is neshama, but he gives creation, which is guf itself. The hainu yesh miyayin, from a state of non-existence into a state of existence. And the word va'ata has to be read as follows. Hey bechinas ha'esis mi aleph v'yad tov. Aleph and tov means Hashem creates the world using the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, beginning with aleph and ending with tov. And v'ha'hei, the letter hey metzayis ha'peh, which are the 5 sources of the different sounds, which is makei ha'esis, the source of the letters. We have menatzpach, mem, nun, tzadik, pei, chaf, which are the esis that are the root of the 22 letters. Some come from the throat, some come from the palate, some come from the teeth, some come from the lips, and some come from the tongue. And these are 5 basic sources of all of the different esis. That's what the hey represents. Now Hashem doesn't have a body that you could speak of metzois and esis. The Torah still says, Hashem himself is above the whole notion of speech, and the whole notion of esis, and the whole notion of metzois. Nevertheless, there's a hishtalshalos. And in this scheme of hishtalshalos, we speak about Malchus being Hashem's mouth, and Kvayachol there being Hey Metzois. We begin as his galus. It's the revelation and coming down to us of Hachav Beis Esis, El Yenes, the 22 letters. First of all, the Nevi'im to the prophets. It manifests in their wisdom and their intellectual reach. And the vision of prophecy. And it also comes down, not just into their mind, but into their levushim, oasis of thought and speech. As the pasuk says, Ruach Hashem diber bi, the Spirit of Hashem speaks inside me. That goes on Seichel and Asaga. Umilasa yalasheni, his words on my tongue. This goes on Machshava v'diber. So just like in Nevuah, when the Navi speaks, the words that he's saying are the words of the Eibishter, even though Hashem doesn't have words. In a similar way, just like we all understand that Hashem inspires a prophet, there's the inspiration and there's the words of the inspiration. The same is true in the letters of the Eibishter that come into the creation. As we find in the Torah, the words of Hashem created the heavens. So Baruch Piv, and the wind of his mouth calls from all the hosts. And all that says in the Torah, and so forth. In order to come down from the atheist of Torah to the atheist of creation, that have many, many chain reaction steps of Ishtalshlus, Vatsumas that are most intense. See a goofness till they create physical creations. As opposed to Hasagas and Aviyam, the intellectual reach of prophet, he ba'atzilas amas labeshes be'el mabriya. It's not Tzilas that reveals itself in El Mabriya. That's why Nevuah becomes a mashal, and creation becomes a nimshal, because there's much less Ishtalshlus in Nevuah and there is in the creation. But just like in Nevuah, the words that the Navi speaks are also the words of Hashem, not just the inspiration. So there is an idea of words by the Eibishter which creates the various creations, and it justifies the idea of Chof Beis Eisius and even the idea of Hey Metzos. Okay, so the Perek Sheni's Nekuda is, since we have Yesh Me'ayin and Savat B'chol Rega, using the Moshe of Kriyas Yamsuf, we have a raya for Hashgacha Pratis and for miracles against the sheet of the philosophers.